Hello there, all my lovely jewelry makers. I'm Christina of CSLdesigns, and in today's tutorial I'm going to show you how to make this Pipa Knot wirework chain in both a beaded and non-beaded version. And this chain will work great both on its own but also in conjunction with another piece of jewellery. So if you want to learn how to make your own, then keep watching. So to make these links, all we're going to be using here is this regular round silver coated copper wire, and this is a 0.8mm. So these are then the pliers that we'll need. Now first of all, I've got my flush cutters here, of course, to be able to cut the wire. Then I've got my tweezer nose pliers. I also then have a pair of round nose pliers here. And finally, I've got my nylon jaw pliers. Now this is to avoid the wire getting scratched from the pliers, so I do recommend having a pair of these. And I will of course leave links in the description box down below that might be helpful. Otherwise, let's get it all ready and let's get started. So I then prefer to cut several lengths of wires ready here, so I can just grab them as I need them. And each length is about 20 centimeters long and will make 2 links for me. So obviously that will depend on the size of the links that you're making, but that's just for reference. And we can just, of course, cut more wires when we need them. So to get started, we need to grab 1 length of our wire, and then I'm also going to start out using my round nose pliers, and I'm just going to be working towards the tip of them. So starting towards one end of the wire here and placing my round nose pliers quite towards the tip, so the loop we're going to make is going to be quite small and about 1 centimeter or so in from the end of the wire. And then keep hold of that and then bring the long end of the wire all the way around the pliers and overlap the end there. So we basically create a little loop like that. And then I'm just going to put my pliers away for now. And now I'm just going to do it by hand. Now, of course, if you prefer, you can use pliers for this if you want to. But basically, this loop that we just made, the little one, is going to be the very top loop. And now we need to make another loop here. The long end of the wire is coming in this direction. I'm going to bring it back around towards the end of the wire there and create a bit of a larger loop. And this is also the point where you're going to basically decide how large your links are going to be. So bring it all the way around till it becomes a full loop again, and again overlap it so it overlaps itself. Kind of created a figure of 8, but the 2 loops are different sizes there. And like I said, you can decide the size of your link. Now obviously if this is your first link, you can just decide it, but say if you already made some links, you can always compare them to get similar sized links. So that's about right there. Then I'm going to take this long length and we need to bring it down the side, right in between the 2 loops there. And then around the back to come to the other side. Now back around to the front. And then wrapping over towards the opposite side there. And basically now we want to create another loop here alongside the large one that we made, but inside of it. So I'm just going to kind of use that large loop as a guide to where to put my wire, to then create this loop to fit inside of it. And obviously it doesn't have to be perfect or anything, just so it fits nicely inside the loop there. And we create another loop inside of it. So if we're just looking at it from the right angle, it looks like that. And then my wire here, the long length, is coming towards this side, and I'm then going to bring it down the side again below the first time we did it, so below the wire that's already there, and then around the back and straight out to the opposite side. So this is what we have now. Now it's going to look a little bit funky probably, because you can see we have quite a few wires kind of overlapping. So this is where I'm going to bring in my nylon jaw pliers and basically flatten this out because it's quite thick right now. So all I'm going to do is literally put my pliers on top of the whole link and squeeze it, push it down. And that flattens it out and kind of settles all the wires into place. And then it's going to look a little something like that. Now what I then just like to do is I find down here the bottom part where the wire overlaps can look a little bit off when you do this, so I like to just kind of maneuver it into place using my chain nose pliers. Rather do that now. So just adjusting it a little bit, kind of tighten it up a bit like that. And then before I move on with this long length, I also then just like to finish off that short little tail that we left initially. So I'm just going to go around to the back and then bring it further in over the back here. And then just go and cut down the excess, just a short little length. So I have just enough left that I can grab onto that end with my chain nose here and basically bend it completely back on itself, so the very end of the wire there gets tucked up basically in towards where the other wire there is crossing over and under, and it's basically just to get it out of the way. And you can also tighten up that bend a little bit, push it down if you need to, and just make sure to run your finger over it, and if you can't feel it, this should be fine, so it's not going to catch or scratch on your skin or anything. Now that's got out of the way, so back to the front here that we've been working on. I'm then going to, the long length of wire here, bring it up the side where it's coming out, below the other wire that's coming around the side. And now what we need to do is get to the end of the wire and push that down basically into the hole of those larger loops and bring it all the way through like that. And then you'll have that wire crossing over and kind of still then following the shape and design and blending in, but we then have the length coming out at the back. And then I'm just going to kind of bring it upwards, flatten it, and then straighten it out downwards so it comes straight out at the bottom there, something like that. And one last time, I also just like to use my nylon gel pliers and flatten it out just to get it as non-bulky as we can. And if you're then happy with it, obviously if you need to do any adjustments, I recommend doing that now, but if you are happy with it, then the last thing to do is create the loop on the bottom. So I'm just going to grab my tweezer nose pliers and just go up, leave a little bit of a gap there between the large loop and then where my pliers are. I'm kind of just judging it to be enough space just for one wire to be able to wrap around. So one length, just do one wrap around there. We're just going to create a wrap loop now. Again, I'm taking my round nose pliers and just working towards the point of my pliers to get this loop quite small, because the loop's really just for connecting. We don't want them to stand out too much. Bring the wire all the way around so it goes out towards the back. And then just make sure, now obviously if this is your first link, you would just finish this off, but if it's not your first link where we need to attach them together, just make sure that the loop there is open, so I can then grab, in this case here, ones I've already made, and attach them together. And I'm just going to make sure the fronts are facing each other, well, not facing each other, facing upwards there, so they're facing the same direction. And then to attach them, I'm going to kind of follow the wire. This is just how I like to do it, to make sure that they get attached and end up in the same direction. And then put the end of the wire there through the loop, and this is then coming through from the back. Bring it all the way down and link in, and then you can just double check that they are both facing the same direction. Then grabbing my chain nose again, grab onto the loop, and then literally just wrap this wire around below the loop and just filling in that little gap that we left just once or so. That's perfectly fine. Of course, we then just need to cut off the excess doing that towards the back. And then always just make sure to squeeze down that very end of wire so it's not going to catch or scratch on our skin or clothes or anything. And if you're happy with that, we then made a full link and also attached it to previous ones. And then of course you can continue doing that and create a whole length of chain. And then just to mention, from the length of wire that I worked with, I have this length left, which is perfect for me to create another length of obviously the size that I'm doing here. So I'm just going to use this other half of the wire to create my next link. And now just for reference, of course you can create these links in whatever size you want to, but the ones I'm doing here, now length from the bottom loop to the top loop, it's about just a bit under 1.5 centimeters, or literally just about 1/2 inch, and the width is just about 1/2 centimeter here, or close to, I think, 1/4 inch. And so these are fairly small. Of course you can make them bigger if you want to, and there's no specific size that you have to make them, and just kind of, if you want to make them as close to each other as possible, then obviously just use them to kind of compare as you're working with it. Now what you can also do if you're making them larger is, here I've done 2 rounds, you could say, and there's 2 larger loops on the bottom there. If you make them larger, you'll obviously find that the hole in the middle here is going to be larger as well. So you could always go around an extra time to fill that in before you then bring the wire through the hole in the middle there. And that would then kind of fill out the larger link more, if that's what you want to do. So that option is always there. So this is what the chain then looks like, with just the links put together here. Now if you want to add beads to it as well, for instance, it could look a little something like this. Then I'm just going to show you that. So I've already prepared a link here, and I've got to the point where I basically need to make the loop on the bottom that I can then connect to the previous link. But before I actually make the loop, what I'm going to do is simply just take a bead. In this case here I'm using some 4mm rounds. Add that onto the length of wire there before I make the loop, and then we literally just continue to making the loop in the same way as we did previously, and we're just making sure that that bead sits right below our knot there, making the loop, and then of course connecting it with the previous link. Flip it around, go through it from the back there, and then that bead is going to sit there. Tighten up the loop and just fill it in until you then reach the bead. So basically the bead's just going to end up sitting in between the knot itself and the wrapped loop, and that's the only difference really. Otherwise it's exactly the same. Cut off the excess just like before and squeeze down that little end of wire, and then you add beads that way. So here are my 2 finished chains that I made, so one with beads and one without. You can see the difference there. The beads do add a nice pop of colour, but also you can equally do it without beads and just have the links themselves be the focus. So these ones I just made quite long, and then I put my clasp and extended chain on the end. So these are going to be double wrap bracelets for me. Obviously you could use them as a necklace, but that's what I'm going to do. And these are the links that I showed you how to make. Now I just want to show you some other links for a bracelet I made, and because I made these links to fit the size of the beads more, I made them a bit larger because these are quite small, and that's why I mentioned you could do another round, which I did on these ones here, to kind of fill in the size more. So instead of having 2 loops on the bottom there, this one has 3, and you can then see how they look a little different, but it's still the same basic principle. So you can play around with obviously the size that you want your links to be. So that's how you make this Pipa Knot wirework chain, something a little bit different, and it works well both on its own but also in conjunction with another piece of jewellery, say like a pendant. So I really hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Now don't forget you can check out my shop where I sell both jewellery and kits and things like that. So I'm going to leave a link to it in the description box down below. And also you can sign up to my newsletter so you can stay up to date with everything that's going on. Otherwise, I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you so much for watching it, and I'll see you in the next one.